We have been talking about how to have a great sex life and reclaim God's great gift for your marriage. But what exactly do we mean by a great sex life? Hi everybody, I'm Greg from Heart Tools, where we make it simple to build great relationships. And as we continue talking about sex in paradise and reclaiming God's amazing gift for your marriage, I want to invite you to think about, what do we mean when we say a great sex life? What do you think a great sex life is? Because I think for most of us, we are thinking in terms that are way too small. So in order to broaden our concept of what a great sex life is, let's take a look at the human sexual response cycle. The first stage of the sexual response cycle is excitement. And excitement begins in that first moment that we start thinking about sex and the sexual desire starts to turn on. And that leads to the second stage, which is arousal, which includes foreplay and is all the physical activity that leads up to the third stage, which is orgasm. And after that comes the final stage, which is resolution, which includes the afterglow that we experience, sometimes after sex, where we just feel close and we're in love and we're together, and then eventually, slowly, we become two separate people again. And now the cycle can be completed because as two separate people, we're ready at some point in the future to be excited about being together again. Now, if I were to take a stab at what most people in our culture believe great sex is, it's being as aroused as intensely as you possibly can be before achieving orgasm. That's great sex. And then great sex life is doing that as often as you can. The problem with this thinking is that there are a lot of things that can lead to a high, intense state of arousal before orgasm that don't lead to afterglow, that don't lead to a sense of deep connection. And some of us may have experienced, or if we haven't experienced this, we've probably seen it in a movie somewhere where two people are having intense sex together, and then as soon as they orgasm, the first thought is, how do I get out of here? How do I get away from this person that I just had sex with? We may have had that experience, or we may have had the experience on the other side where we're having sex with someone who is feeling very intensely, and yet when they orgasm, we feel invisible. We feel like an object to them and not like a person that they're close to. And so the reality is, some of the things that can create the most intense state of arousal in us during sex can also lead to disconnection and to isolation. And instead of bringing our partner closer to us in relationship, it can actually push them away. And we'll talk about why that is in future videos. But for now, I want you just to recognize that that is quite often the case. And to be aware that great sex has to be more than just being as intensely excited as you can be before orgasm. Having excitement during orgasm is great, but it's not enough for great sex. Instead, a great sex life involves the entire sexual response cycle. So let's take a little deeper look at each of the stages of the sexual response cycle and try to figure out what's going on for you in your sex life in that stage. So the first question is, what is the excitement stage like for you? When you start noticing that you are feeling sexually excited, what emotions accompany that? For example, you might be feeling a kind of confident anticipation. I'm starting to get excited, and I know that good things are going to happen sometime soon. Or on the other hand, are you starting to feel some tension because you're sexually excited, right? Are you starting to think, oh no, I'm going to set myself up for rejection again. Oh no, I've got to try to figure out how to convince my spouse to have sex with me. Are you tempted in that moment just to look at porn because it's a lot easier and it's safer for your ego and you know it's not going to lead to rejection? What happens in the excitement stage? Is that a connecting stage for you, or is that a disconnecting stage for you? What is the arousal state like for you? When we get to the videos where we start practicing how to grow a garden in that arousal state, we're going to talk about being sensuously present. Think about what happens a lot of times when you're out in nature. Maybe you're on a beautiful beach or up in the mountains, or maybe you're just taking a walk through the woods in your neighborhood and you become sensuously present. You get out of your head. You're not thinking about problems that you need to solve. You're not thinking about your to-do list or your next appointment. Instead, our entire body gets caught up in the sensuousness of the sights and the sounds and the aromas and the texture, and time just seems to slow down, and there's something about that that feeds our soul, and we just want to slow down and be in that moment and drink in the beauty of the nature around us. Is that what the arousal state is like for you? Or does it feel more like the arousal state is just a beeline to get to orgasm, right? I'm going to ignore all this beauty around me. I just want to get to the orgasm. Or what it might feel like for you is that your spouse is on a beeline for an orgasm and you're not there to play. You have a job to do, and your job is to ensure that your spouse gets to orgasm. What is the orgasm stage of the response cycle like for you? First of all, do you have an orgasm regularly, or is it your job to make sure your spouse has an orgasm? Do you have one regularly? And if you do have an orgasm, what emotion is connected to that? Because we can have a lot of different emotions that are carrying our sexual appetite along. For example, when you orgasm, you could be feeling delight in your spouse. You could be feeling a sense of vulnerable surrender to the person that you love. You could be feeling a sense of celebration of your marriage and all that God has given you. You could be feeling things like that. On the other hand, sex can be connected to emotions like shame, and shame is really the powerful driver of the sexual need. You could be feeling intense loneliness. You could be feeling fear, self-punishment, rage. And these things can be very intense, and they could be driving our need to have sex. And the problem is, orgasm doesn't resolve those issues, right? So if I have shame and that's driving my sex life, or if I'm feeling completely isolated and that's driving my sex life, as soon as I orgasm, I most likely feel more shame, or I most likely feel more isolation. It's like digging a deeper hole every time we engage in it. So, what is the orgasm stage like for you, and what do you feel immediately before and immediately after you orgasm? And what's the fourth stage like for you, the resolution stage? Do you experience the afterglow after sex, where you have this sense that, you know, we're in our own little world here, and I love being with you, and I'm so glad you're my spouse, and I trust you completely. All those things that we can feel in that moment. Do you experience that? And as things resolve and you become two separate people again, how is that for you? Are you comfortable with that? Do you enjoy the fact that you're two separate people, both strong and powerful, and you're in a great relationship, but I really like our separateness as well? These are helpful questions to ask and to answer, because I think a great sex life happens when we enjoy all four different stages for what they are. We enjoy the moment we start getting turned on. We enjoy the arousal stage with our spouse, and we kind of take the scenic route there, make it longer because we really enjoy it. We enjoy each of us orgasming. and we enjoy also the resolution stage and becoming separate again. When we're enjoying all four stages, that's a great thing. And when we have confidence in the cycle repeating over and over and over again, that we know how to move from one stage to the next, and so we have confidence that our sex life is going to be great, that's when we've developed, I think, a great sex life. And one of the great gifts of sex in paradise, sex in your walled garden, when all four stages are working well, one of the great gifts is when you're in that resolution stage and you're two strong, powerful, separate people, and you're not even sexually aroused at the moment, but you look to your spouse and you think, that's my lover. That's the person that I get to spend time in our walled garden together, in our private world, our own paradise, and that's one of my favorite places to be. In our next video, we are going to talk about that excitement stage again, because one of our most common snags in our sex life is in the excitement stage and trying to move from excitement to arousal. We have a hard time when we get excited, even getting into our garden. And so if that's happening to you, that is not uncommon. That is pretty typical. And we're going to talk about why that is and what you can do about it. But for this video, what I want you to do is think about the four stages of the sexual response cycle and what each one of those is like for you. And in the Sex in Paradise workbook that I've created to go along with this series, I'll lead you through a series of questions to help you do that. And in the vision portion of this section, I want you to begin thinking about what would it be like if both me and my spouse enjoyed each of these four stages of the sexual response cycle, and what if we both had confidence that we were going to go through the cycle again and again and again without hitting all the snags that we can sometimes hit. Now, the conversation that you're going to have with your spouse in this section is going to be very truncated. And here's why. It's because if you talk about all the problems in each stage that you're experiencing and you don't have the solutions yet, that can be very defeating. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to talk about all the issues because we're going to get to the solution later on in the series for each stage. We're going to help you understand how to do that stage well and how to love your spouse really well in that stage. So we'll get to that later. So you will have conversation about this topic, but it won't go in depth and it certainly won't be comprehensive. But the simple step I would like you to practice for this video is to simply capture what does each stage of the sexual response cycle look and feel like for me right now. What would I like for them to look and feel like in the future? And what does it mean to me to have a great sex life? Do those simple things, simple steps. Practice, practice, practice. That's what Heart Tools is all about.